Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm going to be returning to my roots. That's right, I'm going to be playing some of the original vehicles that I first played in 2011. First up, I'm going to be playing the VK2801. Now, this tank always specials me because it's actually the vehicle that I have the highest experience in on my account in any one battle. I think it was something like a 3,200 experience game. That's with a premium account. That's kind of like about 2,000 plus base experience. Now, I don't think you can really do that in this tank so reliably these days as you could back then, because then the vehicle was at tier 5 and it could meet tier 10 tanks. Now, how would you play a tier 5 light tank against tier 10 tanks? Well, either you could do one or two things. You could try and scout, or alternatively, you could try and use the 105mm derp gun that this tank used to have. The same gun that's on the M4 Sherman now, for example. But back in the day, the premium rounds on that tank were more overpowered than they are now. They had 150mm of penetration, and so it was oh so satisfying to get up behind an E100 and jam him full of I guess 105mm heat shells, 350 damage per shot, and the rate of fire on this tank was also great as well. And that was a lot of experience, plus 50% bonus because the tank was 5 tiers higher than you. All that kind of stuff, not really possible so much now, and you have to have a simply incredible game to be able to get over 2,000 base experience because of the tier spread being reduced so much. Now, the VK2801 at tier 6 in a matchup like this feels phenomenal. Against tier 4 tank destroyers, it works out very well because this vehicle's got 30mm of side armor, and it's also got 50mm of well-angled frontal armor. And so you saw, I was actually side-scraping against a death toaster there, the PZSFL-4C, because he's got a 90mm gun, or is it an 88? It's actually an 88. And of course, he won't be able to overmatch my 30mm of side armor, so I can bounce him and then whittle him down with the 75mm gun that you have to really use on this tank now. Talking about big caliber guns, that is not something that you want to have underneath you. A KV2 on the enemy team, a very respectable player, and lurching over there, that's not what you want to take on. Luckily, I've got some friends with me, and so he can't really kill all of us, right? He's only going to be able to kill us one by one. And you really have to try and take advantage of the rate of fire of the KV2, because if they fire, then you've got about 15 to 20 seconds to be able to engage them. Anyway, let's not worry about this KV2 so much, as I'm going to be able to ricochet a couple of shells off his turret there. And you're going to see me, I think I'm going to dab the 2 key now, which is going to increase my penetration from, what, 132 all the way up to 158. Well, that's not a very big increase. But you know what, trying to take this tank out as he's working this ridge line has to be of key importance. Now, the VK2801, but do I prefer it now or do I prefer it back in the day? I don't know, there was just something absolutely whimsical and magical about playing this game and dealing with those tanks that would double your tier, a tier 5. Now, albeit a statistically impressive tier 5 tank against tier 10s just felt so rewarding. You felt like you were the underdog. And to the victor the spoils, right? Considering the experience rewards you could get for those good games. Not saying it happened every time, but it did feel absolutely wonderful. However, now with the 75mm and the fact that this tank can now meet tier 4 tanks, which just seems absolutely ridiculous, this thing does feel rather powerful. This is what I love about going back to some of the original tanks that you played, that you just forget that you've kind of improved as a player. Hopefully I've improved over the last 50,000 games, although I'm sure some people out there will say, oh no, QB's so much worse than he used to be back in the day. But at least compared to the rest of the server, maybe everybody else has got better, and I've only got a little bit better, because obviously everybody kind of reaches a plateau. And while you can change the way you do things, I think as the player base becomes better and more informed, and it's not so much of the Wild West as it was back in 2011 with everybody being absolutely new at the game, and I was completely new. If you've heard some of my stories about, I didn't even realize how the penetration and the alpha damage mechanics worked in the game. I thought that the gun stats, the way that they are lined up, you know that you've got the first statistic in the garage is how much damage and penetration your standard shell will do, and the second shell is your premium shell, and the third shell is your HE shell. I thought that it was whether you were shooting the front of the tank, the side of the tank, and the rear of the tank, and so I thought that my shells will do more if I hit the rear of the tank, but it was actually HE shells and they had less pen. And I thought the accuracy numbers, I thought bigger was better. Oh god, I was absolute terror scrub back in 2011. I'm not saying that I'm absolutely incredible now, but you get the point that I think we've learned a few things about the game, and the information is so much more widely spread than it was back then. then. Fair enough, Wargaming still don't have perfect tutorial systems in the game, but they're a darn sight better now, especially with complete buffoons like me putting out videos that hopefully will allow you to pick up a few tips and tricks. Alright, so I've got a Lux on my team here, and he is going to take the artillery shell for me. Oh my word. I think the Lux was maybe showing off a little bit to me there, as he did fire off a full magazine into the air, and you're going to see that I'm actually going to stop, and I'm going to say, what am I going to say? Hopefully I'm going to say something. Do I not say anything? What? You serious? I thought I said something. Oh, there you go. I say, TY Lux, and he says, my name Jeff. Okay, well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you taking that artillery shell. That was kind of a get down, Mr. President moment. And luckily allowed me to pick up my 8th kill in the VK2801. And I don't even know if that's going to be a Radley Walters, because I thought that to get a Radley Walters, they had to be of a certain tier. But I guess we'll find out when we take a look at the post-game stats. All right, AMX gets shut down hard by what looks like a high explosive wielding KV1 as he hits him for 464. So, good start here. 8 kills in 6 minutes. But yeah, I'm not only going to be featuring good matchups in my light tanks today. And that's right, because ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm featuring my first ever tier 9 tank even. And for that, this will always hold a special place in my heart. It's the good old German tier 9 heavy tank. It's the E75. Now, we're not having to deal with any tier 10 tanks in this matchup, but there's no tier 7s, and so I'd consider everything to at least be a threat on the enemy team. It's only really the tier 7 tanks that you can sort of brush aside with the E75. Now this thing, back in the day, wasn't quite as good as it was now. Wargaming improved the gun handling, especially on the 100, and is it 28 or is it 24mm? I always mess this up, 128mm on this vehicle. Now what is great about the E75? Well, it's clearly the thick armor on the front of the tank that's well angled, very impressive side armor as well, which allows you to side scrape against anything. And if you do catch yourself in an awkward situation and the enemy doesn't have, say, 300mm of penetration, you can even over-angle your side armor and try and just absorb the punishment there. The turret armor, also great against all shells that have about, 230mm of penetration and less, and it does have a little bit of an awkward cupola on top that you do have to watch out for. Now, back in the day, the E75 actually had a slower top speed, but it had better engine power. Weird, huh? But then Wargaming increased the top speed of the tank and lowered the engine power, but I think they also increased the traverse speed at the same time. So yeah, way back when I first got this tank, it felt like this slow, lumbering beast. Now, it's by no means super quick now, but it's definitely more agile than it used to be, and that allows you to turn the armor quicker to be able to keep the thick part of your tank towards your opponents. Now, who sparked my interest in getting back into these kind of original tanks for me? Well, it's got to be my brother. You can see that I'm in a platoon with Z here, and yeah, my real life brother, I must hasten to add. And I love it, because when we were platooning about a month ago, he kept picking the tanks that we used to play together, because he hasn't played so actively in the last few years, and so the only vehicles that he does have are those kind of original vehicles that we had together. And it was phenomenal, because he kept picking these classics, things that I've totally forgotten about now, because you've got all these newfangled tech trees. Even the British tanks count, the Japanese tanks, the Czechoslovakian tanks, the Italian tanks, and even the Polish tanks. All of those are fairly new tech trees to the game if you're a pre-8.0 player. Alright, so I decided that I want to push aggressively into this location, because I see that most of the enemy's tanks that have good hull down capacity are actually along the A line. And look at this T-28 Proto. Absolute tunnel vision here by this player. That's because hardly anyone pushes into this position. Now, I did this with Z, I think, the previous week. This was the second time that we platooned together, at least recently. And we pushed aggressively into this location, but it didn't work against, I think it was a Super Conqueror that was sitting up there. But I wanted to do it again, considering we were in a very good matchup here. Alright, so you see that I'm actually loading a premium round here, and I think I was loading that premium round because I was expecting to have to go through the front of the T-28's turret, but now I'm going to go back to my standard rounds, because we don't really need that 300mm of penetration. The 246 the standard rounds have on this tank should be enough to contest these vehicles, especially when we're kind of shooting up into the lower plate of the E75 here. Now, my brother is actually side-scraping, and this is a rather dangerous position to side-scrape. Let me tell you why. Because when he reverses his tank up the slope, he actually exposes his engine deck as he tilts his tank upwards. And so if the enemies shoot on this part of his vehicle, and it looks like that one actually went in, they're going to be able to overmatch the roof deck of this tank, and so definitely watch out for that. So while I move the camera over to my brother there, I actually put in a round into the object 430 for 376. out of 490. That's practically a min roll, right? What is it actually a min roll in this tank? It's going to be 100 and 100 and 100 and... Oh no, not quick maths on the spot again with the scrubby baby. Okay, it's like, yeah, it's pretty much a min roll. Was it 490? Oh no, I'm really screwing up now. 490 is just going to be 125 and then minus 2.5, so it's like 122.5 minus off the 490. Yeah, practically a min roll. Okay, absolutely brutal stuff that we don't quite get the 430 there. Well, at least roll higher on him. But now we're kind of just going to put the E75 back into a frontal position. And that's really why you want to keep this tank. If you can keep your opponents in front of you and just work the corners like this, this is where I'm most happy in this vehicle. And what can go wrong with 490 alpha damage, right? Nothing. Absolutely nothing can go wrong. And there you go. There's the roll that we wanted. No longer 376. 536 with a 72 fire on top, and that's just the cherry to hopefully be able to shut down the tier 9 Soviet medium tank. And I thought he was the one who was firing heat at me, but of course the 430 only has APCR, I think, with about 270 millimeters of pen. It's the T-54s on the enemy team that you have to worry about with a tank like the E75. Of course, heat rounds, the bane to any existence of the German heavy tanker. You really have to be careful about that. But look, even the E75 has dabbed the 2 key here, clearly frustrated that he wants to just, I guess, auto-aim at me or just not aim correctly, and I'm putting round after round after round into his lower plate with standard ammunition. Well, I guess you can see what I was talking about there with the E75, that 120 millimeters of side armor and a bit of spacing as well over the tracks there ricochets my round, but hopefully right up into the lower plate, shutting him down. I think I penetrated that guy. How many times did I penetrate the guy? 1, 2, 3. Oh man, I farmed his entire tank, literally all 4 shells into the 75. Poor guy. But I guess it was a fair engagement, right? I don't think I fired many. I think I fired 1 premium round at him. And mostly apart from that, it was just standard rounds. And it still feels rewarding for me to do that, because when I was first playing this tank, you couldn't fire premium rounds in it unless you literally wanted to get your credit card out, because gold rounds cost gold. Now they just cost extortionate amounts of credits, but of course, to be able to afford extortionate amounts of credits, you have to get your credit card anyway, really, to be able to either afford a premium account or to afford a tier 8 premium. Or you've got to be willing to play an unfeasible amount of tier 5 and tier 6 tanks. Vehicles like the M4, the M44 if you're an artillery player, anything with HE rounds, or shall I say large or high penetration standard rounds is what you want to play if you're a free-to-play player and you don't have any premium tanks. Of course, if you've been playing the game since 2011, I'll be very surprised if you didn't manage to pick up some tier 6 or tier 8 premium tanks for free. For example, my first tier 8 premium tank that I ever got in the game was the T-34. Now that was because previously it was a tier 9 American Heavy, a standard tank, and when Wargaming replaced it, let's think, they replaced that with the M103, right? Then they moved the T-34 to being a premium tank, and they gave it to everybody for free. Wow, that was generous of them, right? Yeah, sure. Was very generous, actually. I was very happy about that. The second premium tank I actually got was from my brother, who you're seeing in this game. That's because I built a PC for him, and so he compensated me, or just said thanks, I guess, and he bought me a Type 59, which back in the day I think cost 7,500 gold, or about £20. Now you probably have to buy about 100 or 200 euros worth of loot boxes to be able to get them. Yes, how things have changed. Some things for the better, some things for the worse. Anyway, let's just see if we can finish off this game with the Scorpion G rolling out in front of us, and wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. We shut down the tier 8 German premium tank destroyer, and it looks like somebody decides to just shoot him for a little bit of fire for effect. I think that was the Object 430 on my team. And a sterling round here for the E75. 6 kills and a whopping amount of damage. Yeah, it feels pretty good to go back to your roots, especially when the games go as well as this. So first up, it looks like I do pick up a Radley Walters medal here, which suggests it is tier 4 and higher vehicles for those 8 kills and a high caliber for 2,000 damage dealt in a tier 6 game. and doesn't look like we fire that many premium rounds as we still make a fairly decent profit. Next up in the 75, a high caliber for that 5,600 damage dealt, and a whopping amount of base experience, 1,456. And again, not many premium rounds fired, so we make a decent amount of profit, although I hasten to add, this is obviously with a premium account, and this is with a personal reserve bonus. And that means that if I take both of those things away, I would have only made 12,000 credits for a game like this. Well, I didn't really ricochet many shells. I still had some of my hit points remaining at the end of the battle, and I really tried as hard as I can to be a free-to-play player. Anyway, that's it for today, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed this double helping of German awesomeness, and I thoroughly recommend that all of you go back and play some of those original tanks that maybe you don't feel are the most competitive in the current meta, but they might just hold a special place in your heart, and if some magic happens, it just almost feels more rewarding. Now, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And this week, 417 of you have voted, and the winner is the TVP T50/51 with 24 votes. And oh dear. Oh dear. Looks like Google's trying to sell me more mail order brides again. Well, I guess I'm the demographic. Anyway, I'm going to be playing through the entirety of the Czechoslovakian tech tree, starting at tier 1 and working my way up towards tier 10 so you can see if it's a line that's maybe interesting for you to grind, or alternatively, if you already have the tanks, maybe you can pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.